What is up, people? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I should make sure that my mic is on. It is on. Excellent. And it did not get turned down. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ASTROLABE brought to you by King Pilled. This is a bitrate issue. Yeah, I don't care. This is our morning stream for the day of Wednesday, June 19th. Nothing special at all about today. Just an ordinary Wednesday. And I have got some funny clips, some interesting clips, some thought-provoking clips. Doing my best to avoid outright blackpilling clips. I'm not necessarily trying to get you guys down. I want this to be a place where you can know that you can come and not have to worry about having your mind inundated with a bunch of depressing and if something is going to have a negative bent to it, I want to make sure there's at least a positive thing we can highlight and talk about. So, trying to create a little refuge in the internet for you guys. Let's see. What was I going to say? Oh, so we are here in Texas right now. We're about to be hit by what was promised to us as a tropical storm. It seems like it's getting a little weaker, and we're not actually going to get quite as much fun as we thought we were going to. But getting up this morning and walking outside, I was like, man, it's a little chilly. I'm actually wearing 2 layers for the first time in, I don't know, 3 months. I wonder what the temperature is. And I went and I looked, and it's 79 degrees this morning. So that's how it's going in Texas. I woke up, it was 79 degrees, and I was a little bit chilly. I think part of it is there's a cooler wind blowing. If you've never been to somewhere where it's hot, there's like the Southwest hot, which is that's my country. Southwest America is just it's wondrous. It's so nice out there. Even when it's hot, when it's 115 degrees outside, you don't want to dig holes in the sun, but you can walk into the shade and hang out in the shade, and it just feels wonderful. There's usually a nice breeze, but southeastern United States is a whole new ball of wax. The humidity, I don't know, so some combination of factors here. This is next level. My wife describes it as when she walks out the front door. She'll walk out the front door and her glasses fog up right away. And she says it's like walking into someone's mouth. And that's the best descriptor I've ever heard. When you feel wind, like hot wind is kind of odd, but hot wind in humidity is very, very weird. It's like, I don't know. It'd be like if you opened up your stove, and stuck your face right in it and just feel this hot wind blowing in your face. It's not fun. Anyways, so I'm going to attempt to continue suffering through all of this for you guys, because being down here is what allows me to do this show like this. So, in case you guys missed it, my interview with Disgraced Propagandist dropped yesterday afternoon. You should go listen to that. It's on the Carousel podcast, and I tweeted it out yesterday. I'll tweet it out again here after the show. But got another couple interviews that I'm in the process of scheduling that are going to be pretty good. I'm actually going to be having Disgraced Propagandist come on the show and talk to you guys. We've got a few different things to choose from. He's a pretty prolific writer. And he sent me over some links of stuff to read. And I'm going to be reading through those as soon as we finish this stream here, and then schedule a time to have a conversation with him, because I think he's a pretty interesting guy. All right, so let's get our first clip here today. I got a whole bunch, and we're going to start off with, this one isn't even funny. This is just touching, really. It's sentimental. It's beautiful. This is a beautiful piece of art. So this woman, Sarah Catalin, it's like Caitlin, except the T and the I are switched. Sarah Catalin, if you're over 39 and single, you're fucked. The dating pond is this. Now, I happen to completely disagree with her. I think she's being incredibly unreasonable. Because check this guy out. My man here is cooking. He is cooking. Watch this.
Let me be the breeze in your sunny day. Let me be the sky for your clouds. Let me be the pool for your waterfall. Let me be the verb for your nouns. Let me be the shore for your crashing waves. Let me be the bricks in your wall. Let me be the soil where your garden grows. Let me be the one, let me be the one, let me be the one you truly love. I will be your footpath to serenity. I will be the bridge for you to cross. I will be your watercolor memory. I will be the love you've never lost. You pull me like a magnet, ever closer to your heart. Just give me time to win you, and now's the time to start.
This is like I don't know, like Mr. Rogers' like dopey stepbrother or something. Josiah says low-key sounds like a contemporary worship song. Yeah, it's totally inspired by that style. I really, my irony filters are so overloaded by being on the internet today that I can't tell if it's real. This is a good one. I don't know if this is a bit or if this is like actually this dude, you know, like he put in the money and the time and wrote the song and went out and filmed himself in all these different places and actually put this on a dating profile. I so desperately want that to be true. Please, please tell me that this is a real video. And if it was a real video, like, this dude is a treasure. This dude is a national treasure. He may wind up, we may discover that he has women in caves somewhere that he's collected over the years. But this is phenomenal. I love I don't know if this guy's a boomer. Is he a boomer? Definitely seems to be a boomer in spirit. This is kind of, we're seeing like an alternate reality where where each, like, if you imagine the boomer generation was then followed by a boomer generation and a boomer generation, like everyone just became just boomers. Everyone was boomers. Like, this is what boomer internet would be like. This would be like chart topping. They would be all about this. Can you imagine going straight from the 50s to this? This man would be this would be their Caesar. They would bow to him. He would be bigger than the Beatles. Kate says, get this man a mid stat. Yeah, this man needs himself a wonderful, dependable, wholesome, reliable mid. He's looking for her. Ladies, all 5 of you that watch this, I think all of whom are married. If you have any friends, if you have any sisters, you need to find this guy. What's his handle? Rayon Base 2020. The song is Ever Closer. The bit and the for real no cap are one. Oh, Josiah, I love your brain. Well, Emmanuel says those lyrics could easily be made into heavy metal. Wouldn't that be a fucking banger? Okay, one of you guys out here, I'm gonna drop this in the chat. Someone needs to do this. Someone needs to start remixing this in all sorts of different ways. Use your meme magic. I don't know how to do this stuff. I just consume it. I consume it and enjoy it. I don't know how to do it myself. But somebody, please take this man and make him famous. He's already 2.5 million views isn't bad. So he's already well on his way. We can add to his legend. Now let's see a contrast here. So this is the other end of the dating spectrum.
My name's Tyler, and I'm a psychosexual. I'm only attracted to crazy girls. There's something about mental instability that gets me absolutely bricked up. It's not easy, but I weed out all the rational girls on the first date. What would you do if I slightly deviated from an existing plan?
I would say, hey, sometimes you gotta go with the flow.
Disgusting. Lose my number. It's tough being a psycho lover because women naturally conceal their insanity and then soft launch it after a few months once the relationship's more established. Little do they know, that insanity is actually what I want. What would you do if I came home, say, 20 minutes late?
I would call you 12 times.
What else would you do?
I would go through your phone once you got home.
Don't stop.
I would get blackout drunk and get behind the wheel of my white Jeep Wrangler. And if you really loved me, you would make sure I wouldn't crash and die.
Oh. Us psychosexuals have a saying. If she's fucked in the head, she can fuck in the bed. Psychosexuals, we're here. And in this day and age, we're thriving.
Oh, the little tongue bit at the end there is the best. I feel for you, ladies. You have such a hard choice ahead of you. You've either got this guy, or you've got our elderly brother from the previous clip. This is a hard choice. The quality of man available today is, I think this is what's driving women crazy. They just, like how would you possibly choose between these two? It's going to be amazing either way. The dating market is it's a media lie that the dating market sucks. The dating market's actually phenomenal. There's so much diversity and choice, and you could go any different way. The worst thing about it is that you have so many options, and all the options are good ones. Am I serious about that, or am I not? I don't know. Maybe I'm both. Here's another one. Look at this. Look at what frickin' dudes are up to. Dudes are so cool, man. I fucking love dudes. Check this out.
She's just running. Holy shit. All right. It's still going. That's so cool. That was so cool. Did you hear that sound?
This is a man in pure ecstasy.
Did you hear that sound? That sound? Did you hear that sound? Did you hear that sound? Did you hear that sound?
That man has just seen the coolest thing he's ever going to see. When was the last time you saw a frickin' trebuchet? The men are going to be all right. The men are out building trebuchets in the snow and squealing about them. Everything is good. Everything will be well. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, here's another one. This is just a funny one. Okay, can't give away the punchline. Okay.
Men think that this is the female gaze.
No, that's Chris Hemsworth. Female gays are called lesbians.
Men think that this is the female gaze.
No, that's Chris Hemsworth. Female gays are called lesbians.
It's such a dumb joke. I just scrolled past this one as I was sitting on the pot before I came in here to do the show, and I was cracking up watching it. I watched it several times. There's something. The thing that makes it is the little chortle right at the end, where you could tell like he's got this shit-eating grin on his face, and he's like, "I know that this is going to make people laugh, and that they're going to be embarrassed about the fact they're laughing about it." Man, I think not even as a bit, just seriously, this is the beautiful thing about the internet. I think the opportunity for people to just sort of exploit their own creativity. If the internet, I remember when the internet was like this. I remember when if you went on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, like you saw really a bunch of really innocuous, simple, basic humor or interesting little stories, or you have the chainmail era where people would send these inspiring stories around, and I don't know if they were real. Most of them probably weren't, but it's good for your brain to sit and consume that stuff. It's good, like if you're going to sit and consume that versus like arguing and fighting about politics, like the other stuff is fantastic. It's really good for you. It's rewiring your brain to view the world around you as a place that's lighthearted and charming and fun and good. And it's not that you, my wife says Grandpa Matt remembers when. That's right. Pepperidge Farm over here. It's not like it's a, you don't want to just believe the world exclusively is all lollipops and rainbows. Like you have to have an understanding of the dark stuff. But you don't want to find yourself just constantly staring into the void. You need to have this lighthearted stuff. And there's a lot of this. There's very serious people out there who, or this is stupid jokes, and why is he wasting his time on just this stupid thing that doesn't matter? I think it's a beautiful way to use the internet. You just have a fun little joke that comes to mind, and you make it into a little bit. You use creativity to make it into this funny little thing, and you put it out there, and it can go viral, and millions of people can see it. Like, this dude could launch an entire career off of this single clip. I don't know anything about him. I don't even know his handle or whatever. He may already have some big audience, but he wouldn't necessarily have to. This is one of the beautiful things about the algorithm, is if you have some little creative, I don't know, some aspect of yourself that you can exploit and you can highlight. Social media allows you to do that. All these different social media platforms, you can target your little creative niche, and then there's a science to it. You can learn the formula of virality and the formula of how to produce the content that is going to get the reactions that you want. Obviously, this can be exploited as well, but everything can be exploited. Everything can be corrupted. Any sort of venture that you set your mind to can wind up being corrupted. It can be subverted. It can be taken over. It could have a negative impact. But you have to do it anyways. Because the worst thing that you could do is do nothing. Just allow yourself to rot on the vine. You don't want to do that. You got to have the little exploits. You gotta see the bright side and the things in front of you. And so if you see the internet as an opportunity, if you see it as a space for you to hone your craft and eventually move to where you could even support yourself. Like, this guy could, if he has the creative chops, he could support himself full-time just entertaining people using the internet. He could completely max out that particular skill set. And in order to do that, he's going to have to max out a whole bunch of other ones. And then what this would allow him to do is be able to move and live and work anywhere. He doesn't have to be rigidly geographically rooted in somewhere. Now, the way that the lib takes this is they go, oh, so we don't need geographical rootedness at all. Just throw it out completely. And that's not the case either. What this allows you to do is not be bound against your will or bound for things outside of your control to a specific area. You could relocate yourself anywhere, and you could bring your family, and you could start a new community there. These sorts of opportunities are just absolutely abundant. That Instructables link yesterday, Amy, if you're still watching, I need to remind me later to show this to you. I forgot last night. The thing that Taylor shared. Every single one of those little training courses that one by itself could launch millions of careers. And there's tons of them out there. So when we talk about we've talked to, I think I mentioned on the show before, the idea that we're sort of reliving the 20th century in a sense. Or if you could think of the events of, let's say 1913 might parallel to I almost said George Floyd. What was the other one? Not Charlottesville. There's been so many little events like this. Ferguson. So, or maybe Trayvon Martin. So there's kind of like the Trayvon Martin into Ferguson era, and you could think of that as being like the events of 1913, 1914. And it parallels, like the specific number of the year parallels closely, which then has the whole Trump phenomenon from 2015 to 2020 being kind of like the First World War. And now we're sort of coming out of that and moving into the 20s, where we're setting up. There's a number of different future timelines we could wind up on, but a lot of those future timelines wind up being some sort of a recapitulation of the Roaring 20s of the 1920s, which would then put us on track for sometime in the 30s having a depression. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's already begun. But I think that we're going to see a big revival, and then we're going to see an even harder sort of collapse. By collapse, it's not collapse into the bottom. It's a collapsing effect. It's relative from one point down to the other, but it's not like a collapse to the abolition of the human species. And so then following on from that, you would have the period of the 40s being the point at which the real hard break happens. And so then if you were to say in the year 2100, you were to look back, you would see this trajectory building across the teens and through the 20s, and then lulling down in the 30s, and then coming to a big grand head in the 40s. And then society has essentially remade itself. There are some cycles that people have tracked where there's basically like 100-year cycles for human civilizations, which tracks kind of closely to the actual lifespan of a human being. So it wouldn't be surprising if the lifespan of a human society was approximately like the lifespan of a human being. So I'm not necessarily saying that directly, and I'm not saying, you know, because this happened in the 20th century, it's going to happen in the 21st century. I'm just seeing this kind of trajectory playing out. So if that's the case, then what happened in the Great Depression era was you had, because of the rise of industrialization and a whole bunch of other social factors, there was the beginning of famine, and the agricultural industry was getting completely upended, and so a lot of the farmers were all losing their ability to farm themselves, and at the same time you'd had the real rise, the real rise of the university system, and with that you had a brain suck where the university system essentially pulls all the best and brightest from the rural areas and puts them into the urban center. Then, because of that, you get the Dust Bowl. So the Dust Bowl is like the rural areas are getting decimated, and it's really difficult to live there, and lots of people starving, that sort of thing. While things are beginning to really bustle and pick up in the urban centers. Now I think we're going to get an inversion of that, and it's already happening. So all of the urban centers are turning into unlivable hellholes, and people are fleeing. You get the articles about white fortressing, where there's white people who are retreating into neighborhoods and starting to set up their own little micro communities in those neighborhoods. I think this trajectory is going to continue, and it's not just going to be, you know, all the based right winger Christians who are doing this. It's going to be all the people who are going to be doing this. They're looking for a more stable, pro-human place where they can raise their children and control more of their local economy, not be yanked to and fro. So we're going to get an inversion of this initial process where the cities are going to become. We've played around with names like the Smog Bowl or the Concrete Bowl or, you know, whatever, something like that, and all of the wealth and everything is going to be moving out into the rural areas. So America 20 years from now is going to look very different than it does right now. And it's incumbent upon us then, if you agree that this is something that's going to happen or you see it as plausible, then you can begin getting ahead of this. And you can start moving out into the more rural areas and developing intentional communities and insulating yourself as much as possible from the outside world. But at the same time, because of these things like the internet and social media and artificial intelligence, these will also, if you're not someone who's willing to go completely off the grid and like detach yourself, which is going to be the vast majority of people. This is just a simple fact that there's only going to be a small fraction of people who are going to go full Uncle Ted. So for the people those people, I hold nothing against them. More power to you. Go for it. I'm not going to do that. My family's not going to do that. The vast majority of people I know aren't going to do that. They just simply aren't. So I'm speaking now to the people who aren't going to do that. You're going to bring these things with you. You're going to bring the artificial intelligence and the social media and all of that, which means you're going to bring the negative effects of that with you. If you're choosing to do that, then that means you also need to bring the positive effects of that with you. So we went through the whole thread yesterday of the AI effect on education. The way this could turbo boost homeschooling, where homeschooling just becomes the default now because it's the most efficient, effective way of doing it. And there's political movements going on right now that are looking at taking out things like the Department of Education and redirecting a lot of education funding back to families. And I don't care if you have a problem with that in principle or something like, oh, in an ideal system, the government wouldn't be taking that money okay, whatever. Yes, sure. It'd be great if we could get there someday. For now, how about it's better for the government to take that money and give it back to you than to take it from you and not give it back to you. Let's take a step improvement here when we can get it. So then you're moving it. So we got all these people who are moving out of the urban areas and into the more rural areas. And by rural, I'm not saying like 3 hours from the nearest city. There's plenty of those things available as well. But there's also a whole bunch of little Midwest towns that we can take over. These old industry towns that have been gutted by the export of all the manufacturing or increased automation. All of these things have all basically pulled all the wealth out of these towns. But there's a lot of infrastructure still there. There's people hanging on. I'm talking like 5 to 20,000 person towns. There's, I don't know, thousands of them. You could take 10 families and all relocate to one of these towns. And if you played your cards right, you could basically control that town. And if you have the capacity to leverage the technology of the internet, shipping, advertising, selling, networking, remote working, and then the innovative technologies of artificial intelligence paired with 3D printing, or just using it to automate your normal manufacturing processes. If you could bring those good things, then those good things will continue to do war with, and just kind of continue the cycle forward of where we are right now, which is good things battling against bad things. When you bring the bad thing along with you, because I know there's all the people who are like, oh, you have to completely cut yourself off. You can't have a cell phone. You got to get all this stuff out of there. And I think, oh, sure, yeah, that would be nice if you could do that. It'd be great if we try to move in that direction as a long-term goal. But for right now, doing that is essentially damning yourself to poverty. And if you're prepared to take that on and you're willing to accept that, okay, good for you. But a large number of people aren't going to do that. A huge majority of people aren't going to do that. So if we know that they're not going to do it, and that it's a fool's errand to try to persuade them to, then okay, that percentage of people who's willing to do that, you go do that, and you figure out how to make that as good as possible, to maximize your own influence and be able to protect yourself. Because ultimately, I don't really think that you're going to be able to protect yourself that way. I don't think you could just go live in the woods and be able to just carry on a normal life and just assume, oh, well, if I don't have all these technology things, then they're not going to come for me. They're not going to have any influence on me. No. You're ultimately going to have to integrate with society in some sort of way. And every time you integrate with society, it's going to become a vector for these corrupting influences that you don't want. This is part of the human experience. You have to find a balance with these. So this is completely spur of the moment thoughts inspired by this guy making this video, but it reminds me of, you could do this sort of thing. You can go have your farmhouse and your land and exist off of hunting and farming and fishing, and also carry on an entirely digital career. So the more people who are taking this on, the more people who are making this a reality, the more we're going to get this decentralizing effect that will undermine a lot of the negative entities that are it takes away a lot of the vectors that they've been using to corrupt and centralize and distort power structures. This is going to continue being a fluid process, and I think you have to find a methodology to operate within the fluid process rather than thinking you're going to achieve some sort of stasis that you can just sustain forever. Amy says, if long-boobed Amazonians can get addicted to social media, reality will find Larry Bob in the hills too. Yeah, right. That's right. Ghost of, I have no idea how to pronounce that, Gerolitis. Ghost of Gerolitis says, I have some qualms about your historical chronology. Is this the place to address that? I don't want to disrespect y'all's protocol. You could say, yeah, you can comment on whatever you want. If I can't figure out a way to integrate it into what we're talking about, I'll just ignore it, and maybe people in the chat will engage with you. But yeah, you can talk about whatever you want in the live chat. You don't worry about information silos. What do you mean by information silos? Like, I know what an information silo is, but what's your particular critique here. Again, with the historical chronology, I'm not saying that I think that because that happened, because this historical chronology exists in the past, that historical chronology is going to follow that pattern. I'm just noticing that this is the way that I view the last 10 or so years and how I view the next 20 to 30 years. And I think it's interesting that pattern, there's a correlation there where that it's sort of following a similar trajectory. I do think that there are historical patterns and cycles that we go through like this because of ingrained natural rituals that human beings participate in that begin at the individual level and then begin collectivizing and socializing. And so if you understand those on an individual level, this is where the masculinity and femininity distinctions are really useful, because this is like a fundamental layer of reality, is the masculine side and the feminine side and the polarity between them. This can help you understand how it starts. It's easier to see on the micro level, and then you can begin to extrapolate that out fractally to the macro level, and you'll see these same trends existing, where you can zoom out far enough where you can view a human society as an entity or a collection of entities, the same way you would see a small group of people, or even two people, or even one person. You can see the behavior. How does a single person, how do the choices that they make and the life trajectory they follow, how does that affect them, and what sort of feedback loops develop? And you can view a human society as the same thing. You could view a human society as a person. And how does that person's decisions and internal feedback loops manifest in their own trajectory? So I was kind of vamping there for a little bit to see if he'd get some comments in here. He hasn't posted anything yet, so we'll move on. And feel free, man, to keep posting. I'll come back to it. So related to this, we've got Jason in the chat. He's talked about his Neotrads prediction, and I think this is a variant of this. I'm curious, Jason, to see if you see this the same way that I do. So here's a tweet from the esteemed statesman, Milo Yiannopoulos. He says, something has gone very wrong somewhere. So watch this.
What's up, y'all? Jesus 2024, mega, period. Freak Joe Biden. We not voting for Joe Biden. Freak Barack Obama. Period.
You already know what it is, man. Black MAGA, you know. Well, Vicky, you heard him.
Don't sit.
Hey, Trump 2024, baby.
Okay, I'm sorry for subjecting you guys to that. I think her name is Vicky. This is I don't track this particular cultural phenomenon that closely. It's sort of like I don't want to get it like it's like something dirty that I don't want to get stuck to me. Andrew Kloster replies to him and says, GOP base is changing. And Milo says, if it's true that the GOP base is becoming trashy, non-college educated lunatics plus a sprinkling of right-wing aristocrats, I'm here for it. Martin Shkreli says that black scent is worse than mine. What's very interesting to me about this is I don't see this as the typical conning thing. The blacks, we're going to win the black vote this time. That's not my takeaway here. My takeaway here is that this is becoming this is like the cool edge of things. These are the people, the total shameless grifters who are purely in search of popularity and virality and views. They're following the trends. They're trying to get ahead of the thing that's going to give them the virality and the popularity and the views. So there are tons of people who follow this super closely. Like, this sort of thing matters to them. A huge swath of the population. Individually, those people aren't really relevant. Sorry, they're just not. But when the entire mass begins aligning behind this sort of thing, that has an effect. So now you have like the wrestling world, and you have the Joe Rogan world, and you have you've got the right-wing dissident sphere, and you've got the left-wing like the whatever, the post-left sort of dirtbag Red Scare type of world. You've got a lot of the scientific community that's kind of starting to move in this direction. You've got lots of the commercial banking sector moving in a pro-Trump direction. You've got all these different segments of society who are all inclined, like people look at them and they say, oh, these aren't people you should take seriously because look at they're grifters and they're insincere and they're whatever. They're degenerate and yada, yada, yada. Yes, the fact that they're degenerate, grifting, insincere people is precisely what's significant here, is that those are the ones who have the nose for just sheer popularity or just the sheer force of the masses. They're following that. So they're the canaries in the coal mine. So now if the urban street community is beginning to see this as cool, this is the hip counterculture, like this is where all the popular cool people go. They're smelling something. This is the direction things are going. This aligns with, I believe, with 2Bit's prediction of the neo-trads, that this veneer of right-wing or conservative or Republican, whichever descriptor you want to use, that veneer is becoming the cool costume to wear in polite society. It's becoming the cool costume to go out in public in. And this is a huge change. It's a huge change in a very short period of time. We're moving in a direction where it's becoming just normal and acceptable to be pro-Trump, to be anti-immigration, to be pro-America, to wave American flags and engage. It starts off this way in this really like gauche performative, it starts out that way. This is how all of these things begin. And then gradually they move more and more to the center as it becomes more and more mainstream. This is where we're headed. It's another data point in that direction. We're headed to where mainstream culture is going to be, I don't know, essentially something along the lines of the intellectual dark web to WWE. Like that's becoming what is being the mainstream. So then if you have problems with those different communities and they trouble you, you need to adapt to that reality. That this is no longer being the weird little corners of the internet for a whole bunch of different reasons, because of podcasts and the downfall of trust in media and the increasing popularity of Trump. He's the most anti-fragile person I've ever seen. The more that they go after him, the more popular and the more normalized he becomes. Now, I think I did read through a thread the other day talking about the mainstream, what the mainstream is perceived as. And the so-called mainstream is now becoming fringe, but they still see themselves as mainstream. This actually ties into something else before I get into let me see what my next story was here, just so I'm ready for it. Okay, yeah, so the JD Vance. There's as the mainstream media, politics, this whole culture, it's becoming increasingly evident how just completely departed from reality they are. We're going to talk about Scott Adams in a little bit as well, and he's been hard at work on this front for a while. His radicalization has been very interesting to watch. But he's kind of a good proxy for these people. For the his audience is going to be a lot of like Robert F. Kennedy types. These are like the disaffected libs, the people who like this is their culture, and now they don't like they're the left has left me people. There was a guy on Orrin McIntyre's stream yesterday who called it the left fugees, like refugees from the left. And they have all their issues, the Babylon Bee people, they have all their issues. We might talk about those in a little bit. But, oh, interesting. My wife says, did you know gauche is how you say left in French? It's pronounced a little different, but still. That. Tell me more about that later. That might be a whole show in and of itself, because that just unlocked a bunch of different connections for me. So as these people, the DC bureaucrats and stuff, as they become more and more obviously departed from reality, it's becoming more and more evident that these people are less explicitly malevolent than they are just simply deluded. They're completely deluded, and they've seen themselves all along as being the minority bulwark against the masses. They've seen themselves as, like, on an individual level, each one of these people sees themselves as a potential victim. They see themselves as fighting back against something. which would make sense. Like, even if you're the most powerful man in the world, you can direct masses, you have untold amounts of wealth, you're still going to recognize that against all the other people, you're one person. You're the ultimate minority. You have all these millions and billions of people out there who are all coming for you. So in your mind, you're not the most powerful man in the world. You're the most vulnerable man in the world. The same phenomenon exists with all of the shit libs within the urban centers around DC, Capitol Hill, the bureaucrats, the politicians, the lobbyists, the staffers. On an individual level, every single one of these people sees themselves as the person who's just advocating for what's normal and good and safe. And it just so happens that all the people who are around you, they all see themselves that way. And so you're like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, we see the world the same way, and we're the scared minority going up against everyone else. If you see them as malevolent Machiavellian schemers, you're just not seeing reality for what it is. If you treat them that way, if you relate to them that way, as if they're explicitly that way, you're not dealing in truth. The effect of all of this behavior collectively is that it manifests as a malevolent conspiracy. And there are people who are malevolent and conspiratorial, who are explicitly doing these sorts of things, but they're a tiny, tiny fraction. And they would much prefer that it appear, oh yeah, there was this other orchestrated conspiracy, and I was just playing a part in it. You know, I just got caught up with everything else. Like, they want that's their out. So by treating everyone else as a bunch of malevolent, explicitly Machiavellian, conspiratorial people, you're actually running cover for the people who are that way. The vast majority of these people, overwhelming vast majority, are really unimpressive, stupid people who just happen to work their way up through the system because it's the culture they came up in, and they just followed the track in front of them. And now they're just trying to protect what's theirs, and ultimately they have their own sense of just wanting to protect themselves. Self-preservation. That's the word I was looking for. Charles Haywood has done a lot of really good work on this, of how these sorts of things, these social trends build, and then they just flip overnight. We're watching that flip happen, where it's becoming like something that will draw hostility toward you if you're a lib. I'd say within 5 years, it's not going to be cool at all to be a lib in public. That's like something that's going to be pushed back into the halls of academia or wherever. You know, before it was kind of hiding in the halls of academia, and you're like, oh yeah, the weird guy down there that teaches this weird stuff. You know, I think he's like a Marxist or something. Like, who would pretend to be a Marxist? You know, and these guys hide in the shadows and they subvert and they do their little bio-Leninist thing. But then once they get out in public, it's like they have an obligation to just jam the gas pedal forward, because by definition, they're all the freaks and cast-offs that nobody would like. The only reason people like them is because they're tolerating them, because they don't want to be on the receiving end of whatever shitty chaos they throw at them. But if these people don't continually grab power and continually make themselves stronger and stronger and stronger, they can't fall back at all. Anytime they begin falling back, they make themselves vulnerable, because nobody naturally likes them. So they have to keep pushing to grab power. But the effect of them continually pushing to grab power is creating the very response to them. It creates the negative feedback that they don't want. So this sort of thing becomes self-extinguishing. You don't have to kill it. In fact, going to war with it actually kind of empowers it. You just have to say no. Nope, we're not doing that anymore. This is what's cool now. It's not cool to be a lib. Don't be a lib in public. Keep that behind closed doors. We're gonna make it so it's hard for you to come out in public as a lib. What we don't want is, like Dark Enlightenment talked about, like he thinks he's gonna wind up as a on the left by the time he dies, because then you get the overwhelming response in the other direction, where these people start becoming actual victims, being strung up along a highway. That's not good for society either. You don't want to lean into the vengeful son like that. You want to go just as far as you need to take back control, but you don't want it to turn into outright thirst for blood, because that thing has no restrainment. There's nothing that will restrain that. It will completely exterminate a society and you'll be starting again from ground zero. And we don't need to start again from ground zero. That's not necessary. That will cause, like, any time that your modus operandi is we need to destroy lots of things before something good can happen, automatically you are suspect. No true, beautiful, good plan is ever going to start with we need to destroy lots of things. If the good things that you build have Uh-oh. I wonder if is the storm getting to us? I'm going to hold on here and see if the chat catches up. If it is still lost, it's telling me excellent connection. So I just need to know from you guys that we're still going. There shouldn't be much of a delay. Cut out after if the good things you build. Okay, we're now back. Okay. All right, so what I said is if the good things you build have the effect of destroying the bad things, then that's good. Like, this is the direction of holiness. That's good. But if your first premise is destroy all the bad things to make room for us to build the good things, well, you're just doing bad things. You need to start with building the good things. And you need to build the things that are going to, by the effect of their installment or their instantiation, they eliminate the bad things. So yeah, I don't trust anybody who their starting point is like resentment and like we need to just get out there and fuck some shit up and then we need to satisfy this urge of ours for resentment and revenge. And once we do that, then we're going to build stuff in its place. Yeah, that never happens. You never get around to the building good stuff in its place thing. Because once you get a taste of that vengeance, I get my resentment out. Now you're just becoming a lib. And libs don't just go away. Libs don't reform themselves. They just dedicate their entire lives to degeneracy and gratification of resentment. You have to overcome that desire for gratification of your resentment. You have to start from the place of humility, which isn't fun. It isn't sexy. And that's what sacrifice is. This is how men sacrifice for their nations. By focusing on building the good thing and popularizing the good thing and laying down their life for the sake of the good thing. You have to have a good thing to lay down your life for. And that good thing cannot just be absence of bad thing. Because absence of bad thing is not good thing. Absence of bad, there's no such thing as absence, really. But absence of bad thing can be another bad thing. You have to have good thing and pursue good thing. Pursue the truth and the beauty and the holiness and the wholesomeness. And the power of that, the truth is so powerful that the act of pursuing it removes the bad thing. To say, no, we have to get rid of the bad thing first in order for the truth to have any power. You don't believe in the truth. You don't actually understand what the truth is. Okay, so let's move on to this almost 50 minutes in now. Hopefully the connection holds up. So all this conversation going on now about about immigration, and this reminds me, actually, I forgot to pull this link up. Let me look back in the general chat of the King Pill Discord. You can join the King Pill Discord if you go to kingpilled.com and sign up. And that reminds me also, I need to schedule the if we're going to do this Friday evening schizo stream thing in the on the Discord, then I need to get that scheduled. It looks like there's a lot of interest in it. So, okay, here we go. Heritage Foundation tweet. So we've got, whoops, I lost it. Okay, here we are. So JD Vance, he quote tweets this guy, James Polish name, says, how will Trump's policies make it easier for this guy to buy a house? He has no answer. Literally, I asked. It's just mortgage rates were low under Trump and they're higher under Biden. Therefore, Trump will bring mortgage rates down. It's magical thinking. And this was Jack Unheard said, I'm so sick of this administration. I'm 23 years old. I'm ready to buy a house and start putting my roots down, but I have to stick to renting because the housing market is ridiculous. Vote for the convicted felon. This shit is getting old. So here's the vengeful son. yeah, vote for that guy. Vote for that guy because he says fuck you to you people and I don't like you people. This is a powerful spirit. And this guy, typical lib, just does not even get it. So JD Vance, here we have what seems to be the front runner for VP. He says not having 20 million illegal aliens who need to be housed, often at public expense, will absolutely make housing more affordable for American citizens. But I see the left strategy of making fun of people for suffering under Biden policies continues apace. So we're getting some spicy boys out here. And it's interesting. Imagine being able to have like major public officials have conversations online about they're not just saying like, oh, we need to address immigration or we need immigration reform. No, they're saying we need 20 million people deported. And they're talking about the actual mechanisms for making this happen. I said, this was the other tweet. The Heritage Foundation says, well, now where the hell did it go? Oh, here we are. Share this tab. So Heritage Foundation says the only acceptable response to mass illegal immigration is mass deportation. This is something that probably, 2 years ago, Heritage Foundation probably would have lost their Twitter account for something like this. They probably would have been investigated for like war crimes or treason or something like that. Now we've got the Heritage Foundation openly advocating for mass deportations. When someone posted this in the King Pill Discord yesterday, my response was, I'm getting to the point where even after I've applied the standard Con Inc. overpromise and underdeliver adjustment, we're still left with one of the most aggressively right-wing federal governments I've ever seen. At this point now, the overpromising, assuming this is overpromising, assuming we're not going to get mass deportation of 20 million people. Maybe they just got to go through the motions and some people get deported and whatever. This is still like, even when you massively discount and water this down, this is the most aggressively radical right-wing political movement I think I've ever seen, especially relative to the perceived popular culture. This is getting interesting. I don't see this, even being really cynical and trying to assume that things aren't going to turn out the way that they're promising. There is mass popular support building behind something like this. It's always been the case that immigration is there's way more how would I say this? The supporting mass immigration, mass legal or illegal immigration has always been a minority opinion. It's just that there's never been a political force that's willing to take that on really, truly aggressively head on. Trump 2016 was the first time that this ever entered the mainstream, and that became the entire freaking conversation, is people freaking out about it. Now people are freaking out about it, but it's growing. Increasing popularity over and over and over again. Now even people who are not, don't even have like a claim to being right-wing or conservative or anything like that. They're like, yeah, no, we need deportations. This would be an objectively good thing for America. Just deport all of these people. I do think that it is a legitimate concern that if you're going to have some sort of mass deportation campaign like this, you're going to scoop up people who don't need to be deported. There's plenty of like Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't care if you don't like him because he's brown. The claim that he was born in America. He was born and raised as an American in America. And even he's more on the newer fringe. There's plenty of quote unquote brown Americans who have been here a lot longer than some quote unquote white Americans. This is the only homeland they've ever had. This is the only homeland they've ever known. And if they want to advocate for this as an American, I'm more than happy to ally with them. I was talking with Cooper about this morning, that there's this really silly phenomenon where you get on the most ardent right-wing posters, I would say, who have become kind of like almost a parody of themselves. going overboard with all the racism, the sexism, like, well, white America, we need to have a white America, and that's the only thing we can have, and the only people who can work with us are white people. I do want to have, I want to live primarily around white people. It's just my culture, it's my people, it's the ones I like. It's just natural and comfortable to me. I want to have that. But if you play with this at like the national level, imagine you have a president who's like, no, we are not going to engage in a trade alliance with India because they are brown. What? Like, they don't have to be your countrymen to be your allies. You can have peaceful, cooperative relationships with people without saying they're your countrymen. And this has to, at the personal, local level, this has to apply on a much lower scale. You're never going to export all of the brown people from America. It's absolutely preposterous. The level of, none of the people who would want to do that would actually want to live in the world that would produce, with all the externalities that come from it. It would be even just on economic terms, it would be a radical shift. There would be a long build-up period as people had to try to fill out all of this extra space to make the trade routes and everything continue operating in a way that all of these same people want to keep all of their niceties and their goods. They want to benefit from all these different aspects of the globalized economy, but they also want to have their little sectioned off group of we're the true America. We're the only real Americans. And it's not gonna fly. It's never gonna happen. I am perfectly fine sharing a community with brown people or Asian people or whatever other people, even white. Like, there's plenty of white people I have no desire to be around. Like, the worst people in the world that I know about are white people. So-called white people. It's such a almost useless designator. It's way too broad. So, if you think of this in terms of statesmanship, you have the king or the governor or the mayor or the whoever the head is, and he's like, no, we cannot politically cooperate with these other people to achieve certain ends because they're brown. If they want to achieve the same ends as me, then I'm very happy to have that. Yeah, we can absolutely cooperate. And then you have your little neighborhood that you build up with your people. I have my little neighborhood I build up with my people. We could go have a picnic together. More than happy to live in that world. And in that world, if you have that posture, you can actually attain a lot of things. You could get a lot of the things that you want. There's this notion I see all the time among the vitalist pagans who are like Christianity is a cucked religion. It's cucked because it doesn't specify anything about race relations or whatever. Meanwhile, the Great Commission itself says to go into all nations. It doesn't say go get rid of nations. No, nationhood is an outworking of the family. This is absolutely affirmed. Having a family of people where you have blood relations to one another brings with it obligations to one another. You have obligations to each other when you have a blood relation. And a nation is an outworking of this. Part of our problem is that our concept of the nation is way too broad. The idea that you're going to have an entire continent full of homogenous people is just, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the modern world. If you want homogeneity, I'm not opposed to homogeneity. If you want it, you have to create it on the local level. And maybe once you create it on the local level, you could begin building out from there. But in order for you to actually sustain and function, you can't be openly hostile to everyone else around you. You have to have some baseline level of being able to get along with people. Like Wade Stott said, as you get more and more radicalized, you have to still be fun to be around. Yeah, I don't want to live around you, but I'm fine with you being in that neighborhood and me being in this neighborhood. And then we can do a city parade, and we can all get together and work together on the parade. Like, this is how people talk about, like, the early America and the East Coast, and you had the Italians, and you had the Greeks, and you had the Germans, and you had the whatever other different ethnic groups, and they kept to themselves, and then they would war with each other, and they have their long-standing feuds and all of that, and they keep to themselves, but they also would, like, get along and work together. This is okay. Hold on, I gotta catch up with the chat here because you guys are hopping now. This is why Civ frame versus primal frame works, right? Javier Oliva says, saying, quote, real Americans assumes there was a real America once. People long to return to that even with all the sacrifices. I would say that there never has been an America. That what is called America right now is like a fictional identity. America is still in the process of being formed and discovered and born out. There were states, so you had Virginians and you had Georgians and you had I don't know, Connecticutans, whatever. You had these representatives of these individual states, and those were very real identities. Then you get the creation of this America that exists as like this fake political identity. And everyone's been warring over what it's going to be, but there never has been a real America. We're still discovering and understanding and forming and creating what that real America will be. And it's necessarily not going to be homogenous. It as a simple matter of practicality, it can't be and won't be. But as Javier Oliva says, it says make disciples, not flood your country with all nations. Right. So on the same hand, you can't have a family and just let anybody come in anytime and just be treated as part of the family. Then you don't have a family. Your family doesn't exist. So just mass importing other nations into your country is evil. In the same way that if I just like went downstairs and told my wife, okay, from now on, we're going to have go out and pick up homeless guys off the street, and we're going to have them come live in our house. And we're going to treat them as family. We're going to feed them, and they have access to all the whatever we have in the family. That's not going to fly with her. That's not going to fly with me. That's not going to fly with anybody. Then you don't have a family. There's no designator of what is your family. And if you have an obligation and a duty to your family has to exist. You have to be able to differentiate who is your family. So there has to be a middle line here between just mass importation of people by force, obviously wrong. It has to be counteracted by a mass deportation of the people who don't belong here. To remedy that situation, it would be, all right, homeless guy, you need to go out and live on the street again. Go find your own house. And if you invited the homeless guy into your house, okay, you get to live here now. And then you're like, oh, actually, no, never mind. You don't. Fuck you, out. No, now that you've made that decision, it's incumbent upon you to be like, hey, I'm going to find somewhere to put you that's better than where you were before. It's now my Christian obligation to ensure that you're left better than you were before. So if this is pay someone to leave, great, fine. We've got more than enough budget for it. We don't need to be dedicating millions of dollars to studying the mating habits of some obscure owl or something. Take that money and use it to pay all of them to go away. What's the price? $20,000 a head? Okay. Deport 20 million people at $20,000 a head. Fine. What is that, like $400 billion or something? Let's do the math. So 20,000 times 20. Oh my God, this is way too many zeros. 1, 2, 3. So 400 million. Yeah, $400 billion. Sure. What's the new? I just saw something the other day that the new budget for the Pentagon is like $850 billion or something. There's $400 billion. It's a significant chunk of cash, but it's still like a fraction of everything else. What is that? Is that a tenth of the federal budget? right now, somewhere in there. Cooper says segregation will occur naturally. Our current mess is the result of social engineering. Right. Amy says Moses married an Ethiopian. Correct. There's absolutely you can't be a Christian and say that there is no basis for intermingling of races. There is no Christian basis for that. The forced intermingling of races, there's no Christian basis for that either. But families merging together, there's obviously a basis for this. Okay. Oh, King Salmonfish is here. Josiah says mass immigration is an idol of the irrational, i.e., evil blank slate philosophy. Yes. Amy said I would be one of the homeless guys. Yeah, that's right. I'll pay you $5 to fuck off, Trailer Park Boys. Be redeemed by the Father so you can redeem your dad. Yes, we must redeem our fathers. That's what this comes down to, is we need to redeem our fathers. The errors of their ways become the debts that we have to pay off. And when you pay off someone's debts, you're given responsibility. And responsibility becomes authority, which becomes power. Let's see now. So we touched on that. And this, I wanted to highlight this point that good friend of the show, Oren McIntyre, made. This is from about a week ago. So the famed Thomas Massey interview with Tucker Carlson. Oren, right in the middle of when Oren's being accused of purveying goy slop, he says, this interview is wild. Every conservative commentator interviewing a congressman should be asking them about having an APAC babysitters and should be pushing to demand FARA disclosure. This should be one of the biggest stories in the country. And Will Tanner says the Israel lobby has been out for years. This isn't new news, and the people who didn't care about this foreign subversion of our political process for the past few decades aren't going to suddenly start caring now. And Oren's response is perfect. He says, always important to differentiate between what is obvious to the wired in and what is obvious to the rank and file, and to pay attention when that dynamic is shifting. Your brain can't be so cynicism poisoned that you become incapacitated intellectually, and you can't understand, you can't recognize these sorts of trends when they're happening. That's one of the things I love about Oren, is how clear-headed he is about this, and clear-eyed. He says, you have to notice when it's happening actually at the level of people who have influence. So everyone looks at these, the all-in podcast guys, the Silicon Valley dudes, the tech libertarians, the overlap with the conservative Inc. guys, and they're like, oh, we've known about this forever. Yeah, well, these guys haven't. They just haven't. It hasn't been in their milieu. This is exactly the critique of them, that they're so walled off from reality, they're totally out of touch. They're not even equipped. They haven't even had the capacity to observe and recognize these sorts of things. And now it's very clear that they're coming online. I think I had some other, related to the immigration thing, a little more substantiation for this. Our favorite tiny-faced guy, Charlie Kirk, who has had quite an interesting character arc himself. He got himself on the radar of Biden-Harris HQ. This super cringy attempt by the existing presidential administration to appeal to the plebs. Top Trump advocate Charlie Kirk endorses the Project 2025 plan to round up Latinos in mass detention camps. Get immigrants out of my country. Adios. I want my culture back.
Get them out of my country. Send them home. This transcends race. This transcends income. I want my country back. I don't want America to become Honduras. Adios. I want my culture back. And this is not a fringe belief. Get them.
Oren McIntyre says, what a strange way to endorse Charlie Kirk. This is not your father's GOP. This is not your father's Con Inc. These are statements that were relegated to the complete fringe a year or two ago. And if this is containment, cool. It's progress. They're getting really radical in their containment now. Okay. So now this, I think, I already talked about that. Let me run through these real quick and see which which what are the next stories I have? So I've got a whole bunch of Scott Adams stuff, and that ties into Elon, and then we'll wrap it off with the Caitlin Clark. Okay, so before we do that, real quick. Oh man, I didn't pull up this other thing. Okay, bear with me, folks. I got this other clip we have to get. And I got to remember where I put it. I think I put it in here. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment as I try to find this particular clip here. I know one other place that I can find it if I have to, but I hope no, it's not in here. Damn it. Okay. Then let's go into the King Pill Discord. We're going to go to the fitness and health chat, and we're going to scroll up to okay, it's not there. This is some of the best schizo stuff that I have ever seen. I've never. This is the intersection of so many schizo things all together at once. Some of the best tweets I've ever seen. It's going to be worth the wait, I promise. Okay, here we are. All right, so first of all, this David Gornosky tweet. So David Gornosky, quote tweeting Brad Cohn, he says, everything is magnetic. This is well, here, we'll watch the video here first. And then there's some weird stuff going on here, and I'll explain it. I've got another tweet that goes more into it.
The imagination is not a state. It is the human existence itself.
Anytime you flow energy through a system, it is creative and creates structure. The faster the energy flows, the more complex the structure becomes. The sun generates large-brained animals. Printing Super Christmas tree on the floor. She challenged me there to say, why don't you tell the cat to pick that up and go look at herself in the mirror? And I told the cat to do that in clear English. The kitten looked at me, went over and grabbed this bristling fur twig. Looked like a giant Groucho mustache.
The most sublime act is to set another before you. Little lamb, God bless thee.
So, of course, this is the beautiful man, Ray Pete. And you couldn't really hear what the story he was telling. The clip is just not, the music in the clip is too loud. But did you notice the little kind of like fuzzy sound, little staticky fuzzy sound? What that was if I where did this other freaking thing go? Here we go. This is what that was. So I came across this the other day. I said, I've unlocked peak schizo, and honestly, I couldn't be happier. This is a video made from the spectrographs turned into like audio format of thyroid hormone. So this guy found the spectrographs of T3, T4, and magnesium glycinate. This is what they look like. And you can actually turn this into audible format. That is what this guy did, and I won't make you listen to the whole thing, but we'll share this, and you can hear part of it for a sec. So it might be a little hard to hear. He added the sound effects of fire, like fire crackling. So you can hear fire crackling. I think there's like a rain effect in there as well. But you can hear that boo, 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 boo. So he shares this, and people started listening to it. And as people were listening to it, like if you start understanding how the frequencies work, everything is frequencies. There's all of matter has a frequency. I'd be really fascinated to know if this actually works. If there's actually something to this, where listening to the frequency of the thyroid hormone actually affects your thyroid. There was a lot of people who were reacting to this who were like, I'm noticing an effect. I'm noticing something. I started listening to it for a while. I just put it on repeat and I just sat there and listened to it for like 15 or 20 minutes. And I started getting this kind of weird tingling kind of sensation where like, it was sort of, I think I described it as like 10% of a niacin flush. If you've felt if you've taken niacin, that is the flush niacin, and you felt that tingly burning kind of sensation, I was feeling like 10% of that. And I started salivating and I started getting sort of like a weird feeling around the back of my throat, which is what everyone else was reporting as well. Now, is this psychosomatic? I don't know. Is that a meaningful distinction? Does it even matter if it's psychosomatic? If you are listening to Cooper, why are you calling me? If you're listening to something and it has a psychosomatic effect on you that's equivalent to the effect itself, then is that a meaningful distinction even? So some of the, Cooper, if there's something essential or something, then, okay, he says, oops, you're not my wife. Yeah, okay, there we go. Some of the responses to this were just great. Oh, is it not going to show me them anymore? Oh, here we are. So quotes. So Grimhood, this is purely knowing Grimhood. This is not a. Let me show the screen. He says, "I played this while laid outside last night and began to hear the footsteps of like a backpacker exiting the grassy swamp area. I was immediately alerted as it was past midnight. A deer exited the tall grass, but it was one of the strangest deer I've ever seen. The proportions were just wrong, and its tail was thick, long, and standing straight upright like a dog's. The deer took on a bipedal stance and began walking around the dark perimeter just outside of the circumference of the floodlight. My eyes were transfixed, and I couldn't look away despite feeling an intense dread and an impending sense of doom. I didn't sleep well last night. What does it mean?" And I just told him that it's working. That means it's working. Brad Cohn says the possibilities for metabolic jihad have never been greater. What do you think he's listening to? Probably heavy metal or hard rock. And you've got the Chad here lifting weights, listening to the thyroid hormone. This guy says, this is it. This is the experiment that will drive my girlfriend insane. Nicholas Stumphauser, he's a good follow. Great guy he's the guy who directed the documentary Died Suddenly about the pokey things. He says, I think it's real. There was some other good ones here. It would be quite cool to supplement via sound waves. There's at least some evidence for it. I don't think it's placebo that 432 hertz music noticeably calms me down. And I just felt tingly throat after listening to the thyroid beats. Interesting stuff. Brad Cohn says, playing this on loudspeakers outside of my house 24/7 to repel lower life forms. Now, one of these here was particularly interesting. So this chick here has Lyme disease. So she's like a Pete poster. And she said, this is interesting. Casually listened to this for about 30 minutes. Just tested 99.2 degrees Fahrenheit. First time I've gotten past 98.4, even with supplementing prescription T3 plus T4. This is significant. If you spent any time in the Peter circles, one of the things that they do regularly is they test their body temperature, because they have a good explanation for why the low body temperature is indicative of underperforming thyroid and hypothyroidism. So there's very strong correlations between increasing your body temperature and taking like thyroid supplement and eating PD foods. And this is one of the ways that people will track their pulse rate and their body temperature. This is one of the ways that people will track their own progress, is doing their pulse rate and their body temperature. So if this is true, that just listening to this elevated her body temperature this high. She's got Lyme disease. She's already got a thyroid issue that she's tracking regularly. And these people are some of the most insanely detailed autistic spurgs that you'll ever find. And I say that with great love and affection. If listening to this actually increases her body temperature like this, this would be verification in some sense that listening to audible thyroid hormone is a way of supplementing with it. If that's actually legit, and you could do this with other things as well, this would be absolutely profound, both in terms of what it would allow us potentially to do and also what it would reveal has been happening to us. Because if we're inundated with all these different frequencies all the time, then that could be why people feel like shit, why people are unhealthy, what's motivating them toward making bad decisions or cravings or all these sorts of things. Josiah says Peters are mentally ill with love. Yes. Plutonium capsules. This is one of the most fascinating things. This is one of the most fascinating forefronts of the internet right now is watching all of the schizo people uncover and begin to recognize frequencies and the potential with frequencies. This goes into some of the schizo streams, the schizo rabbit holes I've been going down lately that I want to share with you guys. We're going to start off with talking about a lot of it in the King Pill Discord, but as I begin getting into more bite-sized formats, I'll start doing more of it on the show. I think the current model of physics is broken in so many ways, and one of them is the underappreciation for the significance of frequency. What frequencies do to the human body, both positively and negatively, and what an understanding of frequency would allow us to actually begin to accomplish. There's all sorts of different technologies and stuff that are being developed on this basis. One of the most mind-blowing things is that human consciousness can affect quantum random number generators. There's been tons and tons of studies on this. It's been extensively documented and proven that the human mind thinking about a certain number will affect a quantum random number generator and the number that it outputs. There was another study that was done where I can't remember if I talked about on this, so if I've mentioned it before and I'm rebooting this for you guys, then sorry. But there was a study that was done where, first of all, what they did is they took an image of, say, a cat, and they said, they show you the picture of the cat, and then they give you a choice between cute and ugly, and you pick one or the other. And they test the amount of what you choose and the amount of time it takes you to make that choice. Then, logical next step, before they show you the picture of the cat, they flash so quickly it's imperceptible to the human mind. They flash the word, one of the words. So maybe they flash cute, and your subconscious mind picks it up, but your conscious mind doesn't. Then they show the image, and then they have you make the choice. And flashing cute affects the choice that people make, this is pretty well understood. It was basically what was expected to happen. Then another guy came along, and he said, well, let's try this another way. Instead of flashing the word before the image and before they make the choice, we will flash it immediately after they make the choice. So the new sequence of events is you're sitting down, you're at a computer, they show you an image of a cat, then they flash cute and ugly, and you pick one. And then immediately after you've picked one, they flash imperceptibly to the conscious mind, they flash one of the words. And it had basically the same effect. Flashing the word afterwards had a perceptible effect in the right direction on the people making the choice. So if they flashed cute after you made the choice between cute and ugly, you were more likely to pick cute, and you were slower to pick ugly versus the control. So there's only two ways that you can explain this. One of them is that your mind, the human mind, is somehow going into the future and seeing what is going to be flashed and using that to inform the choice that they make. So telepathy. The other one is that the human mind is somehow affecting the randomizer that is flashing this word up and influencing the word that it's going to flash based on the choice that they made. So telekinesis. Those are the only two options. Either of those options just completely breaks the rest of physics as we know it right now. And none of this is leaking out into the mainstream. None of this is actually being used or observed or recognized. Nobody's changing their priors based on this because, again, the media, the news is not in the business of actually covering the news. It's just in the business of programming you to think about certain things. But if this is true, then what the media is doing becomes even more significant because they are not just, it's not as simple as, oh, we're just going to program you to think about these things and then you go out and you act that way based on the things you watched. They are actually manifesting these things into existence by talking about them. The implications of this are absolutely profound. If consciousness is non-local, then there's so many different things that are on the table. Like weather patterns being controlled by the emotions of people in a particular area. Which is interestingly something that the ancients seem to have an instinct for. All right, King Salmonfish, you got to chill out. The paragraphs, the spurging is not contributing anything here. I don't know if the people are enjoying the show, watching and listening to what's going on, but now it's just turning into spam. So that's something that I'm listening to a really interesting schizo stream right now that I'll probably share on a future King Pilled Schizo stream. But consciousness being non-local, which ties into remote viewing and so-called astral projecting, and gets into all the sacred geometry and all those sorts of things. I think this is a part of what has happened over the last 100 years is liberalism hasn't just infected and by liberalism, I mean like the materialist blank slate. Humans are just a tiny little speck in a meaningless universe, and everything is subjective and relative. Like all these things that go with it have invaded every single domain. And one of the domains that they've invaded is the domain that deals with ancient history, mythology, and then physics, astrophysics, et cetera, all these different things. And we haven't fully sussed out the extent to which those things have been corrupted, but they've created a baseline understanding for us that have to do with the shape of the earth, the structure of the cosmos, the movements of the stars, all these different things. And they seem irrelevant. These things seem like they're meaningless or just like weird schizo stuff that doesn't really matter. But that perception is actually part and parcel with the liberalized delusion and dilution and corruption of these different fields. And it's also part of why innovation in the space of atoms has dwindled off so much. Because the world of atoms doesn't seem as meaningless. It's more just kind of sort of chaotic and random, and it's like whatever. You got the programming. Programming is very we've got these easy boxes and there's patterns and we can track these and control these and all those sorts of variables. But then the natural world is just kind of like some spontaneous organization of everything evolved, and it's a big soup out there, and we're just a tiny little speck on a tiny little speck in a whole sea of tiny little specks. But if you realize that there's actually much more significant patterns and if the laws of physics are not what we've been conditioned laws of physics are, then I think this has profound implications on us. King Salmonfish, engage with you. No, I don't. This is my show, dude. I'm not here to just entertain your rants. You're completely off topic on a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not talking about. I have no obligation to engage with you, and this isn't censoring you. Go start your own show. Start your own show and talk about all this stuff. J-Song, any thoughts on the book, The Electric Universe, i.e. gravity is fake and gay? Yes. I haven't read the book, but I've seen a lot of the Electric Universe stuff, and this is exactly along the lines of what I'm talking about. Nikola Tesla. And gravity is a very interesting conversation. I just listened to a debate between Professor Dave and Austin Whitsitt, and it's a shit show. It wasn't really worth my time. But it really epitomizes how the so-called mainstream has handled these sorts of things. Just hand-waving legitimate questions and just reifying their own theory constantly. And there's a very interesting question about gravity. What is gravity? Like, what's the difference between the effect that we call gravity and the thing that we describe gravity to be? Because you get this circular thing where they're like, oh, you don't believe things fall down? Yeah, well, no, obviously things fall down. Well, then what? Gravity. Well, yeah, but you're just saying when things fall down, that's called gravity. And you've created your formulas to explain it all, but you have presuppositions baked into those formulas that are either unproven or disproven. So yeah, things fall down, and we could say when things fall down, that's called gravity, but you're just playing word tricks. This is just like word magic stuff. What is gravity? What's the underlying mechanism there? This has been roundly debunked already. The Einsteinian relativity has been roundly debunked. If you haven't seen it yet, you just haven't seen it yet, but it's very clear. And I'm not an expert on it. I'm not a physicist or anything, so I can't speak to it intelligently, but I recognize it when I see it, and I understand it when I see it. If this is something you guys would be interested in, I can find someone to bring on the show to talk about this. That might be a good way to move it forward. Yeah, it's an observation, but that's not the same as an explanation. Austin Schooling Glober's intros are really good. Yeah, the intros. And then he does like 3-hour streams, and he does like a kind of a lecture series, and then he just engages with the chat. And as with every community, it ends up kind of just once they start talking, it just kind of devolves into bantering about stuff back and forth between globe and flat Earth. But the actual science of it is very interesting to me, and I think that's the real value of it. Okay, so let's do some Scott Adams stuff. I also would like to talk to David Gornowski about magnetism and some of his thoughts on that, plasma, vortexes. Maybe we'll have to have that conversation. All right, so Dark Lord Revan makes another appearance. Dilbert escapes the Longhouse. So we're gonna see some Scott Adams thoughts here. Watching Scott Adams' radicalization has been a lot of fun. So he says, we can't have a robust nuclear energy program in America because American women are afraid of it, per polls. This is another reason why women, collectively, should not have a voice in national security. They don't even recognize national security when they see it. Here, I'm agreeing with James Carville that the biggest problem with the world is preachy women. He's quote tweeting Balaji Srinivas, and China and India are building nuclear. And Scott is getting very concerned about these sorts of things, and I think for good reason. I see nuclear energy as less. I think it's interesting. It seems to me to be less necessary than the. If you begin to understand the phenomena of vortexes and plasma, the behavior of plasmoids, and what this says about the reality of the ether, the structure of the ether, the availability of energy around us just innately in the universe, and the fact that we can, for lack of a better term, tap into that energy, the way Nikola Tesla was describing, then nuclear becomes, I don't know, it's kind of a tchotchke. I don't know. It's sort of interesting. Yeah, sure. Maybe try to have nuclear energy, but I think there's much better ways of doing it. More Scott Adams here. He says, if the only thing you knew about politics is that Democrats are trying very hard to remove Elon Musk from the economy, you'd know enough. And this is kind of the onboarding that a lot of these people have had. Elon Musk is a very well-respected person. There's loud little narrow corners of the internet that don't like him, but in general, he's very well respected, very popular, seen as extremely gifted and worthy of respect, like objectively by his accomplishments. So it's like you were coming for you were coming for all these other people, and I didn't really care about that, but then you came for Elon, and that's what radicalized me. That's what got me going. Many such cases. Eventually, when you have these little renegade movements that are rampaging through your society trying to take people out, eventually they try to take out someone who really matters to a lot of people, and that radicalizes them. That gets them on board. And so that guy becomes like a nexus for change. This is what Charles Haywood has been, why he's said Elon is basically the most important person in the world right now. Because as Elon goes, basically everything else is going to go as well. More Scott Adams. He says, once you realize the fentanyl trade is supported by some dark parts of our government who are partnering with cartels, you will recognize these tiny moves as nothing but show. The tiny move being Gavin Newsom doubles Cal Guard deployment to counter fentanyl trafficking. Scott's been on the fentanyl thing for a long time. because I think he had someone close to him, like a relative or someone close to him who died from a fentanyl overdose. And he's been talking about the relationship between China and fentanyl and the cartels and immigration for a long time. He's been shouting out the good word there. And these things get a lot of traction. He influences a lot of people. And again, a lot of these people are the, maybe you might say like the Robert F. Kennedy voters. He's got a lot of the anti-vax moms and those sorts of people. But this is the way that human societies organize themselves. They start with, you got the big people, the big brands, the big names, the celebrities, and they have followers. And their followers essentially outsource all of their thinking and their planning to the people above them. So as the big people begin to coalesce together, they naturally bring the people below them who see them as someone worthy of following. They see them as a leader, as respectable. They trust them. Then they follow along with that. So as you have all these different celebrities who are all beginning to congeal around the same subject. So this is why these subjects are having such staying power in the narrative. Another one that he retweeted is this. This was in the same context. @Amuse quote tweeted this thing about Biden administration continues its weaponization of federal agencies to go after Elon Musk. Again, ask a court to bar him from serving as an officer or director of a public company, exposing him to the possibility of removal from Tesla. They sued him previously, and I think they're disappointed with the outcome of that settlement and how he's responded to it. They're putting in the extra work to see if they can get a stronger case here. And he says, Lawfare, Biden's regime is asking a court to bar Elon Musk from serving as Tesla CEO and to remove him from the board. He would be unable to take SpaceX, Starlink, Twitter, or Boring public unless he resigned from each. Democrats are livid Musk bought X. And I think he hits it right at the end there. Elon Musk buying Twitter, turning it into X, was really the pretext for all of the rapid changes that we're seeing. The entire shift in the narrative, which becomes self-reinforcing. This all happened because of Elon. Because of Elon taking over Twitter. And I don't think Elon is alone on this. Obviously, he's got a bunch of backers, and there's a bunch of people who saw this as an opportunity themselves to use this to drive a wedge to carve off power for themselves, and more power to them. Pardon the pun. What this really does come down to is him buying X, like they see him as an enemy. They see him as the most important enemy, almost as important as Trump. They see him as a top value target to go after and try to undermine. If the people who hate you, who want to see you destroyed, who want to eliminate your possibility to live and move and operate in the world, then if they see a guy as their foremost enemy, there might be a reason for that. It's possible that he would actually be a valuable ally to you. That's how I see it. They recognize the significance of what he did when he bought X. Every single thing he changes about it, they freak out. It's kind of like the guy, he was a congressman or something from New Jersey, or I don't remember where, who posted something. He had an official statement from his press office about how concerned he was that Bukele was moving a painting in the airport in El Salvador. And Bukele just nuked him from orbit. He was like, maybe if you were more concerned about your own people than you were about what we do with the art in our airport, then America wouldn't have some of the issues that it does. Maybe focus on the things at home. It's the same sort of thing. Like any little thing Musk does, this is because they recognize his power. They recognize him as essentially the figurehead for all opposition to them. It's between him and Trump. And so as he and Trump begin to align more and more, the movement grows steam. There's a particular one here that, okay, here's another phenomenon that's happening. I think I've got, where was the other one? Yeah, here. So there's these two go together. Stupid browser. So Bill Ackman, who we've talked about before, view tab. Okay. Bill Ackman says, he's quoting Sean McGuire, Sean McGuire says, remember Charlottesville when Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people? I only saw the full clip for the first time today. It's a must watch. He literally condemns the neo-Nazis and white nationalists. Palmer Luckey, another significant figure to pay attention to. He's the founder of Oculus, and he's a Anduril, and he's very much part of the PayPal mafia phenomenon that I've been identifying. He says it was crazy to see this reported so poorly in real time. It wasn't like he backpedaled in some later PR release. He proactively made clear that he was talking about people like the local historical society. It all started with "they're rapists" morphing to "they are rapists." And Sean McGuire says 100%. In this particular case, he was extremely careful with his words. It's a case study in media manipulation. Amuse says people are waking up, and Sean says 100%. You were there early, though. Then you've got Bill Ackman. He says, agreed. Until I watched this video, I thought Donald Trump was referring to the neo-Nazis based on the press that I had read in other media. So it's easy to look at these guys and be like, oh, yeah, sure, just now you're coming around. But I think it's entirely believable that they're just coming around now. The entire premise of the neo-reactionary elite theory school critique of these type of people is that they've been an ossified elite that has held on to power way too long and completely detached themselves from the rest of society. So, of course, when they see the media reporting something, they have no reason to question it until someone gives them a reason to question it. And then they start going back and looking through all the past things and like, wait a second, I've been lied to all along. So we're getting a delayed reaction, but the reaction is sincere. The reaction is authentic. And as they begin questioning the media more and more, they're going to begin to panic. They already are beginning to panic. Like, holy shit, we're a lot further along in this societal instability, collapse of a sovereign entity process than we actually thought. Which leaves them very few options except for throw our support behind Trump and whatever that entails. So now you've got multiple different factions that are all vying for Trump, to control Trump. And ultimately they're going to be compromising and aligning behind him because they see him as the only alternative. This can become a feature rather than just a bug. And then Scott quoted him. He said, amazing. Wait until you find out about the other hoaxes. This one's just the intro. You got a whole list of them here. What are the 10 hoaxes the media has conducted against Donald Trump? Russia collusion, fine people hoax, Russia bounty hoax, Trump's taxes, hydroxychloroquine hoax, Lafayette Square hoax, Russian bounties on troops, Trump's health, Sharpiegate, COVID-19 response. There's a whole bunch of them. And all of these people are beginning to download all of this really fast. It's probably going to make them a little insane. I know that for a lot of people, a lot of us have gone through this stage where all of a sudden we start realizing that everything around us is fake and gay, and it can be really destabilizing. Which puts these people at a sort of vulnerable point where they can be, you could take advantage of them. I mean that in a positive way. Like you can capitalize on their vulnerability and their desire to find something to create stability. If you preach to them a message of vitality and strength and hope, they're primed for it. They're ready for it. They want to see something like that. They're coming with all their other priors that are going to affect them going forward, but they're very ready for an alternative, which to me tells me that there's going to be the alternative. Scott has an interesting take on this that I agree with, in large part at least. 2-Bit Podcast says, the entire purpose of civilization is to insulate the citizens from existential problems by having multiple layers of institutional defense. When that insulation wears out, the citizens become active. Right. Javier Oliva says, good point about Charlottesville. Funny how the media can cement a lie into the national psyche, do damage, and then never pay a price. No justice there either. I do think that the justice that they're going to face is being completely discredited, which to them is like the worst possible thing. They see themselves as the respectable, the intelligent, the esteemed. That's their currency. That's what they want. Take that away from them, and it's the worst punishment you can inflict on them. Scott says, quoting Owen Gregorian, says, RNC co-chair Laura Trump promises to prosecute anyone who cheats in an election. We will track you down. Laura Trump, Republican National Committee, aimed to recruit 100,000 poll watchers, 500 lawyers ahead of election. Laura Trump, co-chair of the Republican National Committee and former President Trump's daughter-in-law, vowed Friday to prosecute anyone who cheats in an election. Quote, this year is the year we do it, Laura Trump said at Turning Point USA's convention in Detroit, Michigan. We are also sending a loud and clear message out there to anyone who thinks about cheating in an election. We will find you, we will track you down, and we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law. The RNC on Friday launched a swing state initiative to mobilize thousands of polling place monitors, poll workers, and attorneys to serve as election integrity watchdogs in November. Laura Trump said the goal is to recruit more than 100,000 poll watchers and 500 lawyers to deploy at election sites across the country. For decades, the RNC was limited in its ability to coordinate poll watching and other election integrity activities by a federal court consent decree established to stop Republican-backed voter intimidation efforts. The decree was lifted in 2018. Quoting, we have a unique opportunity right now that we have not had in 40 years as a party. For 40 years, there was a consent decree placed on the RNC that did not allow us to train people to work as poll workers, Laura Trump said at the Turning Point USA event. Who was training all the people for the last 40 years, not the RNC. Think about how many people the DNC got to train. So now we have this amazing opportunity so we can train you to work in a polling location. We can train you to work in a tabulation center when the mail-in ballots come in. We also want attorneys to work in every major polling location so we are not reactive, we are proactive, she said. She's definitely saying all the right things. The RNC has said its new effort will focus on stopping potential, quote, Democrat attempts to circumvent the rules. The party will deploy monitors to observe every step of the election process, create hotlines for poll watchers to report perceived problems, and escalate those issues by taking legal action. So, Scott, his take on it, he says, the system design predicts the following outcome to the 2024 election. The hordes of Republican election monitors will report so many irregularities, real or imagined, it will be unwise or impossible to certify the election. Too many doubts. The House will decide who won via a constitutional process when there is no result from voters, one vote per state. That gives Trump the win. Biden will pack the court before leaving office and reverse the election. After that, bad things happen. So the details of this, I don't know. I think it's kind of dangerous to try to predict the exact details of exactly how everything is going to play out. However, I think directionally this is accurate. There is going to be a legitimate fight between the newly established RNC campaign for election integrity and the existing distortion mechanisms that have existed. Now, what's interesting is if you track I think we've done this on the show before, if you track the funding, the financing, the support for those efforts last time, it came from Silicon Valley people. The tenor of Silicon Valley has changed drastically over the past 4 years. Now you have a whole bunch of people with significant money and power invested in this who are predicting and expecting a Trump victory. Now, the fact that they believe the election is real, that they believe all of this is an effective way of making political decisions is actually a boon here. Because if they begin to see that all of this is, if the, I'm trying to say this in ways that I'm not going to get the channel nuked. If they see the inauthenticity of some of this sort of thing, they're the ones who believe in this. They believe in having this stable national government that stays out of the way and allows us to pursue our interests. And we're great because we've got all of our institutions and all that. Them believing in all of these things is a boon. Because now, when all of that becomes very transparently fake, they're not the people who are just going to go, oh well, I guess we just have to accept it. No, there's going to be a fight. This isn't going to be like 2020. I don't know what the exact outcome of that fight is going to be, but it's going to be civilizational level. And ultimately, my expectation, if I had to place money on something, my expectation is that the people who are looking for authenticity and stability and competence and strong leadership are going to default to that side under the auspices of maintaining the institutions. This is the way that Trump ultimately is elected. And the entire system sort of in lockstep just falls behind him. The fact that all of these people are being radicalized against the media for lying and distorting things and not reporting it accurately means when the media starts doing that again, they're not going to buy it. There's going to be massive social pressure now. Very unlike 2020. There's going to be massive social pressure against the chicanery. And I even wonder how much of that that infrastructure to pull that off even exists anymore. Sure, some of it does. A lot of it does. This is an age-old, this isn't something that just happened in 2020, but there was a huge push in 2020 to build all of this up. And if there was institutional confidence that the steal has already been executed, then there would be no reason to sell out in really incoherent, incompetent ways to try to stick it to Trump and just make him all the more powerful as he goes along. These are not intelligent people. These are not tapped in people who understand what's actually happening on the ground. By all indications they're giving, they don't believe that everything is secured. They don't believe the fortification exists. They still think that it's up for grabs. They still think there's a legitimate chance that this is a normal election. All of the things that they are all their behaviors, they all signal insecurity and the sense of a impending doom that they can't control. How it exactly plays out, anybody's guess. Anyone who tells you they know exactly how it's going to play out is deluding themselves, including Scott here. I think this is a good guess, and he kind of gives himself a little. He phrases this very appropriately. The system design predicts the following outcome. So it's the system design that's doing it. It's not Scott doing it. It's the system design. But even just the fact, like I said about the immigration thing, the fact that you have the co-chair of the RNC taking a strong stance on something like this and explicitly calling out election interference by Democrat officials, this was a no-no. You couldn't even talk about this in public. People lost their entire public profile for talking about these sorts of things. I thought the trajectory we were on in 2020 was that anybody who talked about it was going to be literally prosecuted. Some have, but things have shifted since then, and I don't think that there's the will within sufficient segments of the regime coalition to actually see this through. As 2-Bit Podcast says, if they install Biden for a second term, things will get very ugly. Yeah, right. And I think that in itself, nobody actually wants things to get very ugly. On an individual level, every single one of these actors is acting in the direction where they think this is what's going to provide the safety and security and stability. As that becomes more and more evident, more and more people are going to defect away from doubling down on the thing that is more obviously going to get very, very ugly. Because, again, these are not scheming, Machiavellian, malevolent super spies. They're just ordinary people in a bubble playing their role and going with what they think is reality. And that reality is going to become harder and harder to avoid. All right. So, last thing here is Caitlin Clark. Now, somehow I managed to go and delete the tweet that I wanted. So I've got to go back and find that again. Nope, give me exactly the thing I searched for. I misspelled it on purpose. Here we go. So let's see if I can find this quickly. Let's try this. These keywords. Nope. Give me exactly what I searched for, you stupid thing. Here's another example that works. And oh, come on. Do I really need to just go dig through everything else? I may have to just go dig through it and pull it up. I've got a guy, I wanted to give him a shout out. One of my reply guys. He replies to a lot of what I say. And he's made this point multiple times now. And I wanted to highlight it because I think he's exactly right. And this is something that a lot of people don't want to believe, but I am here to tell you that I think you need to start considering this. Oh, come on. Okay, here we go. Found it. I was just about to give up. So, Caitlin Clark is a basketball player, a woman basketball player. I have no vested interest in the WNBA. I've never watched it, never have any interest in watching it, don't care at all. What I care about is this meta phenomenon that's brewing. So Caitlin Clark is a good old down-home white girl from Indiana, or Iowa. Good old down-home white girl from Iowa, who has completely taken over the WNBA. This is, within sports ball world, this is just the biggest issue. Everyone is talking about it. Everybody has a take. So I got to have a take. What's been happening is there is some pretty serious, like, straight up hostility toward her from her players, because the WNBA is made up of a bunch of black lesbians, and the black lesbians don't want to see a nice, wholesome white girl kicking their ass at their sport. So this is the sort of thing that's happening. This is a game recently.
And Clark. I mean, that's clear all which was called.
Watch her
the
lips.
Question is, will they call it unnecessary? Kennedy Carter.
She calls her something like a dumb bitch or something like that. And then they've been trading barbs in the media. And this was the more recent instance of this. So another just blatant, flagrant foul on her. Another one of these big black lesbians comes up and clocks her in the head. Let's see a replay here.
The official is pointing to his head. Review it.
Okay, here you go. This is the angle you can see. So they're not even trying. And this is becoming a thing. As I said, Jackie Robinson didn't have shit on true American hero Caitlin Clark. We're seeing the true Jackie Robinson. But this is what my my reply guy buddy here has said multiple times. And I want to highlight this. So he says, if it ends up, this was back in April, he said, if it ends up being a woman who brings the implicit racial competition in sports, explicit, whites will become like all other groups. They will finally root for their own. And he said, he replied to my Jackie Robinson shit post, and he said, this is going to happen. White group consciousness will arise from the world of sports ball, or not at all. I think all of the political junkies who underestimate sports ball, the tribalistic effect of sports ball, underestimate it at your peril. This is going to be very interesting to watch in 2026 as the World Cup comes to the U.S. I think that we're going to see a really a big rise in performative nationalism. This used to be, I remember, even in 2014, all the like dyed-in-the-wool shit libs, they would all be like, yeah, America, we're Americans. I believe that we will win. They like patriotic sentiment like flares up during these sorts of events. And I think there's something really wholesome about this. Like having the American team and watching the American team and supporting the American team because the American team is the American team. This is objectively good. This is a fantastic outlet for cultivating the patriotic American spirit. And the fact that all of there's the distinction between the demographics of the people who operate within the sporting world and dominate and control the sporting world from a commercial standpoint, and then the people who consume all of it, This is destined for a clash. Because the normies, the normie world that just want to grill people, they don't want to give up their sports. They're not going to give up their sports. They shouldn't have to give up their sports. Their sports have been paused, not because of them. Their sports have been paused because the people who could do anything about it, who could actually preserve the integrity and the beauty of their sport, haven't paid any attention to it, have just checked out. And they're not actually defending their interests. They're focused on other domains. I've been an avid sports ball watcher for a long time. Some of the best friendships I've ever made have been from sports ball watching. There's something that's transcendent about going to a game, hanging out with all your buddies, jumping around and cheering and yelling, and being like, we're rooting for our guys because they're our guys, and we hate you because you're those guys. It's like an outplaying of the martial spirit that keeps it honed and refined. If you want a society that's capable of defending itself and executing a martial plan, martial in the MARTIAL sense, martial, then sports is very good for this because sports hones those instincts. Rooting for your team, sacrificing for your team, watching greatness happen, watching the great exploits of individual people, watching them hone their skill, looking up to them and admiring them. These are great, wholesome things. The fact that they've been perverted and corrupted just proves how important and vital they are. Because if they weren't important and vital, they wouldn't have been perverted and corrupted so extensively. They were perverted and corrupted because they were a valuable target. So even if you don't find it interesting yourself, even if you don't care about the sports ball or whatever, you could still see this as a valuable exploit, as a valuable phenomenon in society. And it should be cultivated. I would much rather the vast majority of people be focused on sports ball as their hobby than a number of other hobbies that they have. If anything, because it cultivates the tribalist spirit. It cultivates the spirit of, these are my people, and I'm going to advocate for my people, and I'm going to give them my time and attention and money. Part of the deracination process is taking away these sorts of things and not giving people an outlet for it. A productive, wholesome outlet that they can invest in and be entertained by. Where they see their person, their representative out there fighting for a cause. And they can back him and support him and show loyalty to him. And I say him because women's sports don't matter. Women shouldn't be playing sports. No one cares about women's sports for a reason. King Salmonfish says, doing crazy things for the homies is social morality. What if the homies are bad? It's no type of system. As usual, I don't completely understand what he's saying because he speaks in riddles. But yeah, doing crazy things for the homies is social morality. If the homies are bad, find good homies. There are good homies out there. And you're starting to see it's becoming more, there's been a period of time here for probably 5 or 10 years where if you are remotely conservative, right-wing, like white people, any of these sorts of things, then you have to hide your power level when you're in the sports fandom world. But there's a lot of people in that world who've been hiding their power level for a while and they don't want to keep doing it. They're getting tired of it. They're ready to start coming out of the closet, being out and proud as a patriotic white American. And they want to see their sporting events reflect their own values. They don't want to see all the pride stuff. They don't want to see their outlet, their entertainment be co-opted by these things. And for your answer to be, oh, you worship black men in tight clothes, you shouldn't have this outlet. That outlet's bad and gay and you shouldn't have it. Okay, well, you've just ensured that you're never going to ever bring those people on as allies. They're not going to want to work with you on anything. Sports ball is extremely wholesome. It needs to be redeemed. It needs to be preserved. I don't believe that sports ball shouldn't be an opportunity for political propaganda. I think it should be. It should be our political propaganda. Hell yeah, we should have frickin' fighter jets fly over after they sing the national anthem. We should shoot off cannons. We should face paint and wave banners and march into stadiums. Because this is all the LARPing that cultivates this spirit. It generates it into a contained environment that hones it in people. I think the World Cup coming to the United States is going to be very interesting because it you already get that nationalistic spirit, like what used to happen with the Olympics. Everyone gets really nationalistic and patriotic, and they've worked really hard to tamp that down for a while because that's part of how you demoralize people. That's how you force this deracination on them. And so if you act in a hostile manner toward the sports ball enjoyers, the sports ball appreciators, then you're participating in that demoralization campaign. You're encouraging that deracination. You're encouraging people to pull out from these sorts of things that are very productive and good, that could be very productive and good. My wife says our 3-year-old is super excited to be learning to play baseball with a bunch of other little 3-year-olds. It's really fun. He's doing soccer too. And you get to see, like, I'm sitting here watching my son do this. I played baseball for from 4 or 5 until 14. And it was my entire life. Just constantly invested in honing the skill and learning everything I could about it and studying history. And that's part of what cultivated the interest in history and statistics and everything that I already have is from my baseball exploits. And now I'm watching my son do this and realizing, man, he needs to, this is valuable for him to learn how to be a part of a team and function as part of a team, sacrifice himself for the good of the team, hone this skill, improve himself athletically, all these different things. These are extremely wholesome, good hobbies to have, and they need to be cultivated. And the people who've taken them over for the purposes of demoralization and deracination and political propaganda need to be thrown out, and we need to redeem our sports ball. Anybody who's hostile to sports ball, I'm hostile to you. All right, we've gone over the 2-hour mark. Let us wrap for the day. I just remembered, I'd completely forgotten about this, that there's an episode that I've promised you guys breaking down the Tucker and Bukele interview. So I'm going to see if we can do that this afternoon. I don't know if we'll be able to, but whether it's this afternoon or Thursday or Friday, we're going to do that one this week. It's only about an hour-long interview, so we're just going to watch through the whole thing. And I've got a whole bunch of thoughts along with it. Amy says, at the same time, you should be encouraging sports ball people to turn to God first and see his goodness and the beauty of the game and the experience. Absolutely. Yeah, this goes both ways. That also becomes a vector for you to socialize your own values with other people. Being able to cooperate and have a good time with them, go out to the game together and make friends, become more embedded in your local community. That's exactly what these sorts of that's what these games used to be. We need our social games. We can't just let them go. Let our enemies just take them over and drive them into the ground. We need to fight for them. And by encouraging that fight, a lot of these other things that you care about will come along with that. A revival and a national identity, a sense of affection and willingness to fight for your own people. Encouraging these tribal impulses, encouraging local communal work, taking a position of prestige within your community. All of these things, sports ball is one of the best possible vectors for that. Josh Ham says, when is the last time the Olympics were actively encouraged and were widespread in national pride? Hard for me to judge, spent a lot of time overseas. I remember the Olympics being big in the 90s. When is the next Olympics? Is there any hype? Yeah, the Olympics have been kind of, I would say the same thing goes for that. Like if you see a big strapping young like white boy who's absolutely dominating some sort of field and you could rally behind him even just as a meme, why would you not? This is great. You should totally support Caitlin Clark or any other variants that follow from that. I remember those times. I remember being a kid and being super excited about the Olympics and then getting to follow all the different games. And like, this is the American guy, and I want the American guy to win because I'm American and fuck everyone else. I want the American to kick everyone's ass and stand up there on the podium with an American flag and kiss the gold medal and flex wearing American colors. Hell yeah. How could you be opposed to that? I don't trust you if you're opposed to that. You're not a man. You're skeezy. You're kind of a slippery little fella if you think that that's bad. I think recovering the Olympics may be harder. I don't know. But I think the World Cup in 2026, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Because the soccer world in America is completely dominated by the worst of the shit libs. There's lots of non-shit libs in there, and we all just kind of hide our power levels because the whole thing is fun. It's fun to be involved in. But they've been working very hard to try to extract every possible thing that could relate to Christianity, whiteness, Republicans, conservatives, America, national pride, patriotism. They've been working very hard to extract all of that. But as the tides are turning everywhere else, it's just a matter of time before the tides begin turning in those cultures as well. And the 2026 World Cup is going to be a great opportunity for that because the U.S. team should be pretty competitive as well. So throw your support behind our boys. Even if you just have to LARP it, start pushing it. Push that meme. Get this performative, like the Gundo spirit. We need the Gundo spirit taking over U.S. soccer. And I think we're primed for it. I think that this is a great opportunity. So we need to be leaning into that. Isn't Caitlin Clark a dude? I don't think she is. I think she's just a very dude-looking chick. But believe whatever conspiracy you want. That's fine. All right, I got to get out of here. See you guys. Please like the stream. Hit the like button. We've got 39 watching and 24 likes. You guys have done well. I appreciate you. Hit the like button if you haven't already. If you're watching this later on, please do the same. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPill. Join the KingPill Discord and at kingpill.com, and you can take part in our next schizo stream that we do on the within the Discord. Until then,